the Keystone Sports Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Keystone Kickoff Show. I'm Jim Galante, and we have a really special guest with us for this segment, an All-American player at Penn State, 4-year starter, 2-time captain, along with a 7-year NFL career, Penn State great Brandon Short. Brandon, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Really good to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you on here. Anytime we get one of the Penn State greats from, you know what? I wonder, youngsters know who Brandon Short is and what he did for Penn State as a player? Look him up, okay? If you're too young to remember him, like I do. But anyway, with all that said, Brandon, one of the reasons why you're here is you're running for a position on the Penn State Board of Trustees. What makes you want to be on the board?
Yeah, I guess being on, I guess I'm a little masochistic too. Being on the board is an extremely difficult, job. There's an enormous amount of responsibility, to oversee such a massive, great institution, and I'm proud and honored, to be a Penn State board member. Short of being a father and a husband, I think being on Penn State's board, is the most rewarding thing that I do. On a personal level, the Penn State community, has taken me from being an inner city kid in a housing project in McKeesport, to a global financier. And that's all in the strength of my Penn State education and the relationships that I've built in the Penn State community. But much larger than the effect that Penn State had on me is the effect that it has on the community and the world. I mean, Penn State is one of the largest economic engines in the state of Pennsylvania with $1.9 billion in economic impact. I can see how we provide upward mobility, for young people who come from lower socioeconomic demographic areas to gain an education and lift themselves up, and live the American dream. We're one of the top research institutions in the world. We have $1.2 billion in research, and everything from cancer to polymers to working with NASA. So Penn State is a truly amazing place. I'm honored, to serve on Penn State's board, and I would love the opportunity to help to continue to lead this university into the future.
Well, I want to get into some specific questions about some of the things going on that would have a little influence over. But first, I want to get your perspective, because we are talking to a sports audience, and I wonder if you recognize college football compared to when you played till now, especially over this last handful of years between NIL, the transfer portal, the realignment of conferences. Do you even recognize it anymore, Brandon?
Quite frankly, I don't. It looks like they still put on helmets. They look a lot different than the ones that I put on. They still have shoulder pads, but that's about it. But you know what, Jim? That we are at an inflection point, in college sports. So with all the points that you mentioned, in NIL, the transfer portal, the players have a lot more control. They have a lot more options. And you know what, it is, change averse as I am, and a lot of us are. I mean, it's not a bad thing. Some of the changes that we're seeing, the way that, NIL is headed, and, the way that the transfer portal is set up in its current state. One thing is for certain is that 3 years from now, it will not be in that same state. And what we have to do as a university, we have to be agile. We have to be able to adapt to whatever the current system is and compete within that system. And then if that system changes, then we have to change and adapt. So the only thing that we know for certain is that it will change. And for those that don't change, will be left behind.
Well, and the controls, I'm not sure how much control, even on the Board of Trustees, that you have. I mean, these decisions are made many of them in a court of law, like for NIL and the ability the players have to make money on name, image, and likeness, of course. I guess two-part question. What would you like to see this morph into? And what influence can the Board of Trustees have? Can you have any influence from your position?
So the most people don't understand that the board's role, the board's like the primary role is to hire the president, to and set the budget and provide oversight over the president. So it's Neely, that is really like driving a lot of the decisions. That's President Binda Pudi, but she comes to the board for counsel, and she comes to the board for counsel often to bounce ideas off and to make sure that she has, our support, which she does with, everything that she's done. She's had our support, our full support. So that we have very little control, but what we do have control over, we don't have control over the events on, what's happening in the court of law or with NIL, but we have control in how we react to it and how we respond to it. And we want to respond in the way that's going to make us as competitive as possible, but still maintain our Penn State standards of having excellence in the classroom, being good human beings, good people, and giving back to our community.
Would you like to see the players be paid by the schools?
Well, I can't. It's not whether I would like to see it or not. It's most likely, this isn't speaking from having any information for being on the board. This is just like following the sport. There's going to be some sort of revenue sharing, coming down the line. That the schools with just there's such a wide disparity between schools and what they can offer. With some of their NIL collectives and what they can offer in terms of resources, that there has to be some way to sort of to level the playing field. Not that if revenue sharing came about, NIL would go away. You would still have NIL, but there needs to be some sort of way to level the playing field, to put some barriers around, what people can and cannot do. The key issue is that the NCAA is feckless, for lack of a better term. For those at Penn State, I know I can get an amen for most people like listening that are Penn Staters and have been through everything that we've been through with them, but they don't have authority. So it feels like that the conferences are going to have to eventually step up. That's the Big Ten and the SEC, and put some guardrails around what people can and cannot do.
Well, we always say it's either the conferences or the TV networks, Fox and ESPN, who run all of this. Let's
They might be one and the same.
Actually, yes, I think you're correct with that, Brandon. Well, let's get a little closer to home, but still staying on the sports field, literally. Let's talk about Beaver Stadium. Over the last couple of years, we've been hearing talk of potential renovations, over $700 million. What is going on with that, and what would you like to see go on with that stadium renovation?
So I know that there's been a lot of talk around like renovation, but the reality is, nothing has been finalized. What the board has approved is $70 million to hire an architect so that Pat Kraft and Neely Bendapudi can come up with their plan and come back to the board for approval, and to winterize the stadium. With the new change in expansion of the college football playoffs, Penn State would have been in the playoffs 4 out of the last 6 years. And the current state of the stadium is that we wouldn't be able to have games in the winter because the pipes would freeze. And believe me, I can't imagine the reaction in the Penn State community if we would say we have to go to LSU in the winter because Beaver Stadium can't host a game. So Pat is doing a great job getting the stadium winterized, and I guess we're expecting hopefully to see some plans whenever Pat and his team are ready to show show that plan to the board.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the most exciting thing about the new playoff format is the potential for a home playoff game. I can't imagine what that will look like.
Oh my goodness! It makes me want to jump out of my chair right now. I would hope that we would make an exception and everybody would go in there and wear white for that game, so we can showcase to the world who we really are. That would be fantastic. Although I would prefer to have a bye. but we can discuss that later.
Yeah, I'll take the bye, but if it's a home game and they don't make it a whiteout, that's a crime, Brandon. It's got to be a whiteout if we have a playoff game at Beaver Stadium. I'm with you, though. I'm already thrilled about just the idea of that. Now, I do want to go off the field again. I know our audience, they come to our show for a sports conversation, but a lot of our listeners, they have students, their children are students at Penn State. Kind of a universal question is about where tuition is going. So I'm going off script. I'm going off the sports as someone who served on the board, running again. Is there anything that could be done with this runaway tuition prices? And I only left you a little over a minute to answer the question, unfortunately.
That's super tight. I mean, there's a long explanation of how we got here. Penn State gets the least funding of any state school in the state of Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania offers the 49th the lowest amount of funding per student. The reality is, we need to lobby the state to put their fair share back in to Penn State. We can grow our endowment, which would give the university more funds to invest in research and or to potentially, lower tuition. We could fill the seats in our Commonwealth campuses. And I think that's the biggest opportunity that we have. That our Commonwealth campus enrollment has declined by about 25%, and we can aggressively go after students and offer them a great education and fill those seats. We can monetize our research. We have a product, that's called Lion Glass that it may eventually replace all the glass on our iPhones, and we can learn to monetize those things, and we can operate more efficiently. And I think that President Bendapudi is already implementing a lot of these principles. When she came in, she brought a level of energy and excitement. She's a business person, and she also has the sense of being an academic. And I think that she's been a 12 out of 10 so far since she has arrived.
Very good. Unfortunately, Brandon, we are already out of time. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you join us next time on the Keystone Kickoff Show.
Keystone Sports Network.